There's something I really loved about this conversation with Kelly Kondis. Kelly had been painting for years before her work became something she shared more publicly. But during the Melbourne lockdowns, with her usual businesses paused, she began painting more and eventually applied for an open studio program. People came, they responded to the work, and something shifted. Not in an overnight success kind of way, but in that quiet, powerful way where you start to think, maybe this is all real. Maybe I can take myself seriously as an artist. In this episode, Kelly and I talk about painting atmosphere instead of exact places, building a recognizable body of work, entering art prizes, working with galleries, and creating an art career in a way that still feels honest and intuitive. It's a beautiful, grounded conversation about showing up for your work and slowing letting the world meet you there. This is episode 121 of the Paint, Rest, Repeat podcast. You can find all the relevant links and the show notes over at permissiontopaint.co/art-career-Kelly.
Welcome to Paint, Rest, Repeat, the podcast for artists who are ready to ditch the overwhelm, follow their passion, and build a thriving art life on their own terms. I'm Roz, an Aussie artist, mum of two, and creative business coach who knows exactly how wild, wonderful, and wobbly the artist journey can be, because I've lived it. I left behind a safe teaching career to follow my heart into art, and now my work hangs in galleries and major art fairs across Australia. After years of coaching, I'm passionate about helping you ditch the starving artist myth, stick it to the naysayers, and design a creative life that truly lights you up. So if you're ready for real talk, practical tips, and heartfelt encouragement, you found your podcast. Hit follow and let's dive in.
Today's guest is landscape artist Kelly Kondis, an artist whose work beautifully captures the atmosphere, light, and ever-changing moods of the natural world. Based in Melbourne's Sherbrooke rainforest, Kelly creates layered oil paintings inspired by the landscapes around her and her love of travel. Her work sits somewhere between realism and impressionism, inviting us to slow down and notice those fleeting moments that can so easily pass us by. Over the years, Kelly has built an impressive exhibition history across Australia, presented multiple solo exhibitions, and been recognised as a finalist in numerous art prizes, including the Blue Thumb Art Prize, Lethbridge Landscape Prize, and the Omnia Art Prize as well. Here's my conversation with Kelly Kondis. Kelly, thank you so much for joining me today. I actually wanted to start by talking about your work because it captures these fleeting moments of atmosphere and of the weather as well that, disappears super quickly, right? I was wondering for you, is there a particular landscape, a particular place or a particular, moment in nature that has really captured your curiosity over the years?
Not intentionally. I would say that I was an abstract painter for decades. It was more therapy, sort of moving paint around, and probably for a decorative outcome more than a visual depiction of a place. But I think when we moved to the rainforest in the Dandenong Ranges, I started to not notice more realism, but I wanted to add a little bit more realism. And all of a sudden I was starting to be more concerned with sections and pieces of light and atmosphere. And it started to become a little bit more realistic
Wow.
unintentionally.
I love that shift. So you started out in the abstract sort of world, and then you've moved to this beautiful realism. But so you call it what I've got my notes over here, so excuse my eyes, Kelly, but you call yourself an atmosphere painter, and I resonate with that. Like that, I can see where that comes from. But what's your perspective on that? What does that actually mean to you?
Yeah, I think I made it up, but it might be real. I'm not sure. It just that people ask me, where am I painting? I understand that people may want to connect with a location because it feels familiar to them, but I'm painting more a feeling or a place of being. And it's probably an amalgamation of a whole lot of places that I've visited or seen or captured somewhere in my mind's eye that I'm joining back. And I think most of the time I'm painting water. So the relationship between the sky and the earth, or not the ocean as much anymore now that we're not down there as much, but it's the atmosphere rather than a place.
Your work, I've crushed on your work for a long time. I probably sent you a random message, maybe I feel like it was 2 years ago, just saying, "I love your work."
Thank you.
And it honestly, one day I will invest in one of your pieces because they absolutely blow my mind. I've seen your work
Thank
in
you.
person, but I'm thinking as well today of our listeners who might not have seen your work before. How would you just for people who haven't seen it at all, how would you describe what you paint and also the feeling that people experience when they see your work?
I try to. I think I'm trying to capture a window. Like you could be looking out a window in the forest or of the mountain, or your car window, which is what a lot of people realize, that they see my work and will actually message me through Instagram or something and say, I was in a Kelly Kondis painting. And it's because they might be driving somewhere where they're in a hilly environment and the cloud is nearly hitting the ground. So it's layers and layers and layers of oil paint built up of green and depth of greys and sky with white floaty clouds over the top. So
Oh,
it's basically rainforest mist, the cloud hovering over the rainforest.
my
Mainly. I don't
goodness.
only paint that, but yeah.
Honestly, I just adore your work. So if you are in listening land today, in podcast listening land, definitely head over to the YouTube version of this episode because you can see some examples of Kelly's work behind her. They are just mesmerizing. I absolutely adore your work times 5 million. Now, I do want to know more though about influence of your location. So you live and work from the Sherbrooke rainforest, which I haven't seen, so I don't actually know. What can you describe what is this rainforest like, and also how has it shaped your subject matter? Do you feel and process even?
It's in the Dandenong Ranges. We're about halfway up Mount Dandenong. And it's a temperate rainforest, so it's a cold rainforest. It still looks a lot like your Queensland rainforest or New South Wales, but it also looks a lot like Tasmanian rainforests. Giant eucalypt, mountain ash trees, ferns, lyrebirds, all of the beautiful animals. And a lot of the year we have a heavy cloud cover. So there can be 5 meters of visibility at some time during especially this time of year. So there's a lot of, and I hate saying atmosphere over and over, but it's very atmospheric, and it's a bit, you could imagine Jurassic Park or dinosaurs. It hasn't changed very much. And yeah, it's a mood. It's a feeling. And for some people it's not, it's a bit intimidating, but I also would like people to see it for themselves. Like, if I can invite anyone to drive further up the hill, a lot of people will only come to the 1,000 steps, which is a famous walk that everybody likes to do, but it's the base of the mountain. There are so many beautiful places to visit with all the little hill towns. So yeah.
And so where did you live before? I'm connecting this to your art. So you were doing abstract work, and where were you based, sorry, at that point?
Just sort of on the other side of the hill, the Yarra Ranges, on the other side of the Yarra Ranges.
Okay.
And my family, my husband and kids, we've sort of split it between that area and the Mornington Peninsula on the weekends. But just 15 years ago, we just found we renovate very quickly. It was great when the boys were little, but then they really got sick of moving because we moved consistently, and they said, we want to stay somewhere. So we found a really big one, and we're still here.
So 15 years ago then.
Yeah, we were doing like one every year or two, and then we found one that really showed us who was boss. It's an old lodge.
I'm actually curious now. This wasn't in my planned line of questioning, but I'm curious now, if you've got this background in house flipping, does that would mean that you're quite confident in the interior decorating and design space? And how has that impacted then your practice? Or do you think it's influenced your practice at all?
Possibly. I can't pretend that I'm not thinking about how it's going to hang in someone's home or off. So I don't want to create from that place, but probably it's in me to do that. And realistically, I painted and only probably passed high school because I could paint. But then never thought I could be a teacher or anything like that. So I didn't pursue it, but I kept painting as a hobby. And it's a lot more affordable to make your own pieces to sell homes, and they're great gifts. So that was how I just kept painting. But then during the lockdowns in Melbourne, I started painting more frequently.
Mm.
And that was when I started to evolve into what had always been my favorite, impressionism, a more impressionistic finish. And so, yeah, all the people who were getting lovely paintings for free because stopped. I started selling instead, but they still get some. But yeah, I turned it into a business.
Super, super awesome story. And I love that connection to, your interior design and decoration sort of experience as well. I think that's really interesting place to play. I actually used to work in interior design as well many, many moons ago. So we do have that one in common. I'm just going to pop in here quickly because if this conversation is sparking something in you around your own art, I'd love to invite you to join the waitlist for Art for the Heart. Art for the Heart, or AFH as we often call it, is my online membership for artists who want support, encouragement, practical guidance, and a beautiful creative community around them as they keep showing up for their art. Whether you're wanting to deepen your creative practice, grow your confidence, build your art business, or find a more sustainable rhythm as an artist, there's a pathway inside AFH to support you. Doors open at different times throughout the year, and waitlisters always here first. So if you'd love to be invited when enrollment opens next, head to permissiontopaint.co/AFH or click the link in the show notes. All right, let's jump back into the episode. I am curious as well, how what's your process like with your art? How does it develop from a first idea or a spark of inspiration and then move towards that finished piece? You mentioned layers and layers of oils. You mentioned greens in there and grays. You don't have to give away your secrets, but just generally, what's your process like?
That was how it evolved and that's how I know that I am being more intentional, where I used to just not care if it would have ended up with the land in the top section and the cloud in the bottom, the color or however I applied it. But I've nearly always applied my paint directly to the canvas rather than mixing colors. I mix my colors on the canvas, and now I would more intentionally put my sky palette in the top region and my earth palettes and in the bottom. And if anyone if they had at the time to go onto my Instagram, there are little videos of me in the start process. I just add the paint and I get medium and get that base layer that looks nothing like a landscape on, let it dry, come back a few days later, and somehow the horizon line will reveal itself to me. The mood that the sky wants to be will reveal itself to me. The time of day or weather pattern for the landscape. Is it a bright sunny? Is it a moody dark? It just starts to, as it dries off, it sort of reveals itself, and then I play with it. I feel, like Mr. Squiggle, how he used to get it's almost like someone else does it. Sometimes I feel like I've been in a bit of a fugue and I am not really aware, and the detail comes into the last 5% or so. It just a highlight here and a bit of a floaty extra section on the cloud over there.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's got a realism to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And just such a lovely energy to it. So when you're working then, I know that you said you don't really you don't depict specific locations. Do you have reference images? Is that a regular part of your process, or not so much?
Only if I do take photos. I'm not going to say that I don't take photos when I'm just driving around, dropping the kids. When I used to drop the kids to school, I could be stuck at the lights to go back up the hill and I'd see the sun land on a patch of trees. I might pull over and take a photo, but a lot of the time it just is in my mind's eye.
Yes, I love that.
But then I can go back, but there's no actual location, or even if I tried to start from a photo, it's never going to finish up like the photo. I read Stephen King's biography once, and he, the way that they asked him how he came up with so many stories and was so prolific. And he said he has ideas and he has a filing cabinet in his brain. And as he has an idea, the idea gets slotted into these folders, manila folders in his brain. And then all of a sudden he'll realize that that whole folder is full and he pulls it out and he writes the story. I feel like that's sort of how my paintings come together.
That's definitely because there is that risk sometimes with intuitive work that you sort of just paint, an artist can paint um, the same composition essentially over
Mm.
and over and over again if they don't have enough external input sometimes.
Mm.
But your brain obviously doesn't work like that. You've got all these different ideas going in your mind at the same time.
And I have lots of paintings going at once too. I couldn't say that I've only got two at the moment because I've just finished an exhibition that's opening tomorrow. And then I had one in Sydney. They were really close together. So my studio is very empty and I like to have about 10 on the go at once
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
some paintings look like a plain hamburger and some look like a hamburger with a lot because they have a lot going on. But I like that much variety. Um,
Yeah. It makes life interesting, doesn't it? Yeah. And with your works as well, because you're working with oils, I have seen your work in person, but your application of oils is not particularly thick. Is that right? You sort of lean more into the transparent sort of qualities.
The sky definitely stays fairly transparent and it will be lots of glazing and lots of layers, but it's very thin. The the trees can get a little bit thicker and that can take a little bit of time to dry as well. Also, when I do my canola pieces, that's very thick. It's more textural in the field, but the sky is very thin always. Yeah.
It's just mesmerizing. So, Kelly, I have been wondering for you, was there a point where your painting sort of shifted from being just for you into something you wanted to take more seriously? I mean, I know with your house flips, you were creating work for that space, and then eventually you decided then to sell your work as well. What made that happen for you?
COVID closed our family business and it also closed my short stay business, which was my business that I ran on the side. So my husband and I have a business and I do the administration side of it, but that wasn't enough. So I did a short stay accommodation as well. Both of them stopped. They both weren't allowed to keep running. So I had time. I had 3 kids homeschooling or, remotely schooling. And I just needed to do something. So I painted more and more. And we have a program in the Dandenong Ranges called the Dandenong Ranges Open Studios, where it's a trail and you can come and visit up to 60 studios in a couple of weekends. And I thought, I'm just going to apply. I've always visited, but I'm just going to apply. I'm painting at home. I'll see if they take me seriously. And they did. And then a whole lot of hundreds of people came to my studio and they took me seriously. And I know it was a big shift for me.
Mm.
'Cause I was never brave enough and I started an Instagram account and then I also discovered the wonderful Blue Thumb that allowed me to not have to, front up and talk to scary galleries because that's how I felt at the time. And I just built a bit of a following and then some galleries sort of reached out to me and it, I haven't sort of looked back. I don't know that I have a formal understanding of how I wanted to progress. But through talking, I talk to people. I'm not afraid to reach out to people on Instagram and ask them questions. And most people are very helpful and very kind,
Artists generally love helping other artists, I find.
especially if you're asking questions about how to progress yourself and deferring to them because they've done it. So yeah, it's been very kind and very wonderful to realize it's a lovely community.
Yes.
And I'm so grateful that my work speaks to people, that they really seem to have an emotional response when they're in front of it. Like you've said, I love when people get to see it in real life because it looks different than it does in 2D. It's still 2D, but it's different when you're in front of it.
Absolutely. Yes, for sure. And you know what? I love what you were sharing there about the early days, the early days in terms of not necessarily art making, right? Because you've been making art for a long while, but the early days in terms of taking your art a bit more seriously, because it is quite common to want to seek and to need external validation at the start, So like applying for the trail and then getting through and going, oh, okay, maybe I'm onto something. And then having people come to see your work during that trail and going, oh gosh, her work is absolutely beautiful, and taking you seriously. And then the impact of that and how that almost, I imagine, gave you permission essentially to keep moving forward with it.
So validating. It legitimizes what you're doing, and it gives you the confidence to, and also the more prolifically you create, the more your own style and confidence builds, and just practice. Like, I know a lot of people want it to be that people are talented or people are creative, but you wouldn't say that to a basketball player or bricklayer or any of those people who do something. It's practice. You are able to do it. And the more that you are enabled with collectors helping you to be able to fund that practice, the more it develops. And it's just really exciting.
It's almost like we need like just enough validation to keep us practicing almost,
Yeah. I think it's very discouraging if what you're making isn't landing,
Mm.
because it can be discouraging also with older work sitting around, stifles my growth. And also I don't like thinking about, I try not to think about what landed well, because I don't want to get stuck thinking that's all I can have a go at.
Yeah, it's a tricky one to navigate, isn't it?
It
Because
is.
you're creating for you. I think all artists need to create for ourselves. That's where it has to come from. But if you are selling, it's a fine balance. You want to pay attention to what sells, but not let that own you. Almost going back though to the art trail that you mentioned, I was just curious. What do you think would have happened if you had applied for the art trail and either they said no or they said yes, but then you had the art trail open studio and no one came, or people came and they were not impressed. What do you think the trajectory would have been after that? I wonder how impactful that was actually on your journey.
Yeah. And it was very early too. I think because it was so early, I was shocked, but also just didn't think about how big it was, that it was a success. But I'm shy, but I'm also determined. I don't take no if I am wanting to do something, and I'm happy to step back. I'm happy to step sideways. So I think if I hadn't have gotten into it, it would have just made me more determined to try to get in the next year. So yeah, that wouldn't have bothered me. There are a lot of art prizes that I'll just keep trying for that are a little bit out of my reach at the moment, but I'll just keep trying.
Yeah, because if you don't apply, you're certainly not going to get in, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. But I think if people hadn't have come, I might not have not realized that, that I wasn't drawing people to me. I might just think, oh, it's a bad year, or this is how many people come. But if people had have negative or not responded well, that probably would have shook.
But it sounds like you still would have persisted because your passion and your drive is there, right?
Yeah, I love it. It's a happy place. So I wouldn't have stopped painting, but I may have stopped sharing. You're right. I may have stopped sharing. Yeah.
Now, you did mention there as well art prizes, because you have exhibited a lot of your works at multiple shows and you've entered a lot of art prizes. We don't need to list all of them. I think I mentioned some already in your intro at the start of the episode. But what have those experiences taught you about building momentum as an artist? So, yeah, the art prizes and exhibitions.
I think they're fabulous for many reasons, and not just the big ones. I think they all have a purpose. I think that for someone like myself who struggles a little bit to pay attention, the deadlines are a really good way to force me to my easels. The parameters of size or medium or subject or theme helps me to think about my work in a different way, or just work to a standard that I might not choose otherwise, whether that's to work smaller, if it's a small scale prize, or if it's, one that is encouraging you to think with a theme that is, specific to that year, it's good. I think it's great to get your work in front of peers and the judges who may be gallerists or people like, just to get feedback. Because they generally offer some feedback if you ask for it. So yeah, it's good for me for structure.
Mm. I do hear that one a lot, the accountability that deadline gives creatives, because I think so many of us, like self included, if I don't have a deadline, I'm just in floaty happy land. Like I'm still happy.
Yeah.
But sometimes the structure starts to fall away for my art practice. So that, yeah, I definitely hear that a lot, that need for a deadline.
What I do each year, decide what I'm going to do for the whole year. And each year it's been different. And I just try to make sure I hit a few goals, and they can be varied, but I can share this year. My aim this year was to write a list of all of the prizes that I wanted to enter and not miss one of them. And there are a lot. And because I'd already committed to the ladies at the Toowoomba Gallery for the affordable art fairs, I felt that it was a good way, because I know that if you don't get into a prize, it doesn't mean that it's not a good work. It just means that it wasn't the right work maybe for that particular prize on that day for those judges. There were other people that had the same kind of work as you, whatever the reasons are. I decided that I was going to just keep making prizes that I was proud of to enter.
Mm-hmm.
Because then if they didn't make it in, I had good work to offer my collectors. And if they did get in, they probably still were available for those collectors through that avenue. But at least each piece that I was making was of a standard. Because sometimes you wonder, is it finished? Is this finished? It's never finished. But
That is the golden question for.
yeah, it's never finished. It's never finished. But because you had that deadline for the prize, you call done. And yeah, and I have gotten into a few prizes this year, and then some that I've aimed very high for, I might have missed out on, but there is some work that I'm really proud of that's going to be available for collectors soon. So
Absolutely. And, if, with those prizes, like you said, it's getting your name and your work in front of the panel and the judges. It still is, And so when you apply next year or whenever the next round is, they'll see that name again, your name again, and it'll start to build your reputation that way even.
I think so. Also, they're just a lovely thing to go to sometimes for the opening night. You get to go and hang out with other artists and talk to collectors, and yeah.
So at the point of recording, you have a group show opening in a couple of days in Melbourne, tomorrow maybe.
I have one just closing today in Sydney with Project Gallery.
Yes, okay.
It's been beautiful and fantastic. I went up last weekend, and Katie has really done a great job with my work there. I'm really grateful. And tomorrow night we have the opening of Our Lands at Art to Art.
Yes.
And it's a group landscape show. Yeah. And I'm sure that you know the other ladies.
I do know some of them. I love the combination of artists in that group show. Who else is with you, Kelly?
Lisa Kerr, Claire Bremner, Brie Morrison, and Jack Puntoriero.
Love that. Now, you've offered some really interesting insights talking about, the prizes piece, that validation, the drive as well to keep going, basically, no matter what. I was wondering, generally speaking, for artists who are listening today, what sort of advice would you have for them around developing their art business and sort of taking it a bit more seriously and building from, hobby into sales?
Yeah, I think we're all so different, and our motivations are different. For some people, it's their bread and butter, so productivity is key. And for others, they don't want that to be their primary source of income, because then it affects what they paint. So they have maybe a side hustle that they have that they do as well, which I still work in our family business as well. I think that point of difference is important, and being recognizable, I think, is that people can see that it's your work is important. But I just think that you have to sell where you feel comfortable. And that might be direct through your Instagram, or that might be purely with a gallery because you're not comfortable doing that kind of sale, or a combination of both.
And horses for courses, whatever works for individuals to suit their nature and their work and their location too. So
Yes.
yeah, make it, find a way that works for you. I like that recommendation, Kelly.
I think as long as you keep creating and share it as much as you're comfortable
Yeah.
sharing it, and share a little bit of yourself as well if you can. But that was the bit that was a surprise to me, that people actually like to connect with the person that makes the work as well. It adds another layer of depth to the creative process, I think.
Now, what are you currently working towards, and where can people find your work, Kelly?
In the next couple of months, there will be the Our Lands exhibition at Art to Art. There's quite a good variety of my work and sizes available there with Philippa, and the Affordable Art Fair in Melbourne is upcoming in August, and then the Sydney Affordable Art Fair. So yeah, there's a few over the next few months that I'll be working towards.
Fantastic. And will you be at the fairs yourself, out of
I
interest?
always show up.
Okay.
I didn't make it to Brisbane this year because I had too many other things going on. But yeah, I definitely will be at the Melbourne Fair, and with the girls at the Toowoomba Gallery, I'll be popping in and out, and I definitely will try and get to Sydney as well.
Okay. Well, I will try to bump into you at the Sydney one, Kelly.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. All right, Kelly. Well, thank you so much for joining me today on Paint, Rest, Repeat. It has been amazing chatting about your journey and your process and your absolutely stunning art. Listeners, if you'd like to find out more about Kelly and to see her work as well, check the show notes for the links over there. That is it for this episode, and I'm so glad we could share this time together. I'm Rose Gervais, and I'll catch you in the next episode.